Hey guys, same outfit, different day. For you at least. For me it's not. I literally just finished recording the last video and we're going to get into the next one. I just know that the last one was starting to get kind of long and I didn't want to do that to you guys. So I was like, "Here, let's just, split it up, see how it goes and stuff like that." So if you didn't watch part 1, if you would like to go back and rewatch me reacting to Mujin talking about the history of Love in Deep Space, I would highly suggest it. It gives you a little bit more perspective on what we're about to witness in this part of Mujin's coverage. So, but if you do not want to go back and watch it, I will give you the TLDR, which is Love in Deep Space is an Otome game that came out in January of 2024 and has since then pretty much banked on creating these love interests, which then are being presented in such a way that they are going to create a relationship with the player. I'm so sorry, my dog is barking at something. He might be barking at the dog across the street. I straight up think he's barking at the dog across the street. Hey, relax, my child. Sorry about that, y'all. So, yes, January 2024, presenting love interest, creating a relationship between the characters and players, has about 80 million players, both domestically and globally. There's already been notices and speaking of discrepancies between the, China player base versus the global player base. The finances for them are different. In order to be a VIP in China, you only have to pay $690 within, I think it's a year. Whereas globally, you have to pay $6,000. So quite a jump, quite a difference. But I think the linchpin of this is that the game relies on creating a relationship with the player, and people have gotten very, very close and attached to these characters in a very personal way. For instance, at the end of our last video, Mujin actually showed that a woman had said that she had been dating a wavy-haired painter for the last 6 months, which for anybody who has played the game knows that that is Raphael. Sorry to anybody who is offended by the words I'm about to say. They're not real. These are all fictional men. These are all creations by teams of people sitting in an office creating characters. Just like how I would create a character for Dungeons and Dragons, or I created a character for Baldur's Gate 3, or I've written and I have my original characters and stuff like that for some of my original written stories. That's what these are. But a lot of people who play this game have gotten very attached to these characters and very much, I think, feel like they are real. And so I think that is a big portion of the issue that is going on with this right now, and you'll probably see a lot of that play out in this video with Mujin. So with that being said, let's sit back and continue reacting to what the hell is going on in Love in Deep Space.
This game was all about how it made its own audience feel like they're being individually known and cared for.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't just the game doing this, it was the developer too. Here are some examples. Throughout the year, there will be multiple time-limited events in the game, like other gacha games. And whenever that would happen, they would take the opportunity to make these educational videos directed towards their female audience that taught them different things that they could find useful, well, as women. Here's them, for example, hiring the Beijing 2008 Olympic champion for judo.
Which I will say, I didn't know about this because this seems to be in China,
self-defense,
not necessarily globally.
In which a faculty member at the Mental Health Education Center of the China Academy of Art would conduct a workshop about mental health. But this wouldn't just be limited to a woman's needs. Paper Games, being a Chinese developer, would also take this as an opportunity to teach their massive global audience about Chinese culture. Like how in this video, the director of Heritage Protection Division would teach the Love in Deep Space audience about China's cultural heritage.
Which I will say, there has been a handful of what appears to be cultural events and stories being told in Love in Deep Space. I am not as versed on Chinese culture. I like it. Everything that I've ever seen from like Genshin Impact or Love in Deep Space and stuff like that, like I find it very fascinating. I do really like it. I just am not going to claim that I know everything about it. But I do know that that was also a point of contention with this whole thing that just happened. So sit tight, they might talk about it.
Using the game's revenue to fund things like this made many women express the fact that this wasn't just a community or a developer, this was a safe space specifically for women. You can see this expressed in so many of these different comments. I'm not really making it up. There are people saying that they're literally crying watching the self-defense video. And this comment right here, I think, sums it up, saying, "It's crazy and also super amazing how a dating simulator is inspiring me and others to take care of ourselves, recognize our self-worth, and even learn self-defense."
Yeah.
This is what Love in Deep Space was for so many people. But unfortunately, as time went on, this priceless relationship built on trust would start having cracks form in its foundation due to bad decisions made by the developer, mostly relating to the game itself. What do I mean by this? Well, let's go back to the example of Genshin Impact. It makes a lot of money, and in return, it's meant to give you constant updates. One update typically lasts for 40 days. Then the next update comes along with new events and, more importantly, new story, advancing the plot that everyone's playing the game for. Every update would also typically have 2 brand new characters that you can pull for. And every year, you'd have a major update that would introduce an entirely new region.
Yes.
Now, as I mentioned before, Love in Deep Space does have a story mode. You'd have story segments that are in 3D. It's like a 3D visual novel, right? With cutscenes and voice acting. And you'd also have combat.
Yeah, it's really nice. Nice and neat. I'm actually playing combat right now.
Aspect of the game. Story is what allows you to meet the new love interests that release, while also advancing the plot with them in it. Because they interact with each other as well. They have stories that tie in together and they know each other, sometimes being friends. So while yes, many players...
Yes, every single love interest. So I will say every single love interest has a connection to the what we call main character, because you get to name her. She doesn't have a name. Here's the thing. Every single character, every single love interest has what I would consider a trope. Skip this portion if you do not want to know what the tropes are of the guys and you plan on playing the game. They all have 2. Xavier is boy next door, and in every world and every lifetime I will find you and I will love you. Zane's is childhood friend to lover. I don't know what his second one is though. Raphael's is boss and subordinate, and then his myth one is they all have a couple of different things. But anyways, they all have different tropes and stuff like that. The main ones are boy next door, childhood friend to lover, boss and subordinate, mafia boss, and what would I even consider her? She was kind of kidnapped, but not entirely. I don't even know. They all have different tropes.
Get very excited about pulling for a banner because it involves a raunchy cutscene. If you had to ask them whether they prefer getting a banner of their favorite love interest or more story, the majority of them would always choose more story.
We want story.
But by 2025,
we all want
it seemed
story.
Evident that both banners and story content were just not meeting expectations.
Nope.
They weren't necessarily releasing fast enough for a game of this caliber, making this much money. And multiple complaints will start arising within the community that the scheduling is too inconsistent and the communication is just non-existent. Genshin Impact had a new update every 40 days. That was well established. Other gachas functioned very similarly. It was simply the industry standard. But with Love in Deep Space, it seemed like they just released things on a whim, like as if they were winging it. When it came to limited banners, right? The ones that you had to pull for within a specific time frame, otherwise they
Yeah, it was always like, it's always been crazy looking at the Love in Deep Space banners, because I'm like, how long are we supposed to have these? Sometimes it's like 24 days, sometimes it's 14 days, sometimes it's like, oh, it's 8 days. Like, it's so weird. Like, I want to say for instance, for Caleb's birthday, I swear, I'm pretty sure his birthday, like the banner came out, and I think you could wish for his card for it was either 14 days or 8 days, but you couldn't play like the storyline for his birthday for a while, and then at the end, like the very final day of his birthday, you could play it on his birthday, and 24 hours later, and then it was gone. And I'm like,
are you fucking kidding me?
Most of these other events that we get, birthdays, they do this for birthdays, and I absolutely hate it. But for the other events that we get, 9 times out of 10, you'll get the like final chapter unlocked, and you'll have like 3 days to do it. But like birthdays, if you don't get it done within like 48 hours, like you're fucked.
Disappear, there'd be mainly 2 types. A banner made specifically for one love interest, and a banner with all love interests combined.
And that...
Now look, when it comes to combined banners,
the multi-banners,
there's a lot of misinformation out there about how it works. I saw many, even Love in Deep Space players, saying that you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting the banner that you want.
Basically.
That's not true. There's this mechanic that allows you to select the one banner that you really want and 2 others that you'd also not mind having.
Yes, but when you go for that 50-50, you still arguably have a... because...
Once you hit a 5-star, you'll randomly get one of those banners. If you don't get your precise wish, the character that you wanted the most, then this mechanic guarantees that the next time you hit a 5-star, you will get the banner
Correct.
that you wanted the most. So regardless of how many love interests get added to the game, whether it's 3 or 6, the odds will always remain the same.
No. Hello, editing me here. Adding a little bit of context. I do still feel pretty strongly about some of the wishing mechanics of this game, because if they do add a 6th love interest, that does actually add to the pool. So Mujin saying it doesn't change anything is not entirely true. Also, somebody let me know if I'm wrong or if I'm misremembering or something like that. I feel like I remember something before the precise wish that let you choose what character you wanted, and it was a choice of 2. I can't seem to find it anywhere, but I feel like I remember that. I just can't find it. So if I'm misremembering, that is what it is, but I felt like I had remembered that they added this precise wish, and I got kind of frustrated with it because of the fact that it made me choose 3 characters instead of 2. I've only ever liked 1 or 2 characters in this game, so choosing a 3rd was always annoying to me because I just didn't want them, and it felt like a waste. I do make a comment in the video, which you're not going to see, that I'm afraid that they're going to add to where you have to choose 4 instead of 3. If they keep it at 3, I will be fine. If they move it to 4, I'm going to be really pissy. But it does actually change the pool. So instead of losing to a potential standard 5-star card of the memories of the boys with 5, it's now going to be 6. So instead of having, 10 different options for the standards, you're going to have 12. Again, it's still a 50-50. It's still a coin toss. It's just a matter of if you lose that coin toss, the chances of you getting a character of a card or a card of a character. Wow, can you tell I'm tired editing this right now? A card of a character that you actually want is smaller. So that's the gist of it. Enjoy the rest of the video.
Now I want to make something clear. Remember how I said that Genshin Impact released a major update every year which involved a new region? Well, the version of this in Love and Deep Space is
a new love interest. Yes.
A new love interest signifies a new region. It adds more story, more lore, more depth. I mean, it was just the best thing you could hope for. But by the time the 5th character came out, which was Caleb, a certain issue became very hard to ignore for the wider community. And that had to do with the fact that Paper Games now had a workload that they clearly couldn't handle anymore. More characters coming out with their limited resources meant that some characters would be completely neglected in favor of newer ones. And this leads us to my wonderful creation that I call the neglect ranking. I made this to really illustrate to you just how disorganized the release schedule.
We love that Zane is the #1 neglected. Part of me is not shocked by that, by the way.
Of this game was, as if they were truly winging it. Now, as I said, the most important aspect of this game is story content, but for the sake of this argument, let's look at banners first. So as you can see, the most neglected love interest in this game is Xavier. His last banner was his birthday. This happens every year for every character, by the way. And it was 9 months ago. Meanwhile, Caleb was 4 weeks ago, and Silas...
Where is he getting these numbers? Because he's saying Xavier was 9 months ago, and right now this says 4. And Zane is at 5.5. Like, I have your Sky Blue. I skipped all these others. Yeah, like Xavier's not 9 months.
Was 7 weeks ago at the time of recording. Now, yes, you can make the argument that Silas and Caleb released after the initial 3, but is it really fair to neglect 3 of your 5 characters in favor of the 2 newer ones? What if you played this game just for Xavier or Raphael? This was very inconsistent and showed that there was no real release schedule that made it fair for everyone. That is true. But if you thought this was bad, then wait till you see the main story neglect ranking. Here, the most neglected is Caleb, the most recent character. The last time he...
Yep. I do not even want to talk about this. I've been so mad because I like Caleb. Caleb's one of my favorites. He's had nothing. Like, he got his main story when he dropped, and he's had nothing. I've had that man on my account for 555 days, and I have had nothing about him.
Was in the story was in January 2025, 18 months ago. His debut arc when he first released. When it came to Silas and Zane, 14 months ago. And when it came to the most favored characters, really, in quotations, most favored, Xavier and...
No. Raphael is the most favored. He is the most favored. 110%. I will die on that hill. Raphael is Paper Games' baby. They love Raphael.
Raphael were in the main story 6 months ago. This meant that the last story content for this game was on January 2nd, 2026. We're now halfway through 2026, and there was no new main story content, period. That's without mentioning the characters that haven't been featured in the story for way longer than 6 months. So in comparison to other gacha games of the same tier as Love and Deep Space that make as much money, this was ridiculous. They were inconsistent with their release schedule and were not communicative enough about things to look forward to, about dates. And let's also not forget.
Hold on, I just saw something on my recording, and I swear if it was there in the entire last video, I'm gonna be so mad. Hold on. It's gonna be there. I know it's gonna be there.
The fact that they refused to make a PC client for this game, even though their other games had it. But this was the game that was making them the most money. And so as I mentioned, this would be a recurring topic within the community starting as early as 2025. It would cause multiple dramas with different points of views giving their opinions on why it takes so long to develop the main story and release content. But overall, the biggest loss for this game were longtime players that had spent a lot of money on it, losing hope that anything was going to change. Feeling like the money and time they were spending in this game just didn't matter. Like this money was being funneled to other projects and Paper Games was simply not interested in making it any better. This would start forming a narrative that they were too greedy, prioritizing memories and banners and ignoring the story. It seemed like they simply didn't really have what it took to be this big of a developer with so much success. They just weren't ready for it. As evidenced by the fact that things would get significantly worse because they would somehow commit an unforgivable taboo in their own local market of China. A mistake so grave that it perfectly encapsulates the expression of shooting yourself in the foot. 9/11 is a tragic event that would occur on United States soil on the 11th of September.
Sir, you cannot just like throw that in a video about an Otome game. What? Hello?
September 2001. It's best known for the 2 passenger planes that were hijacked full of passengers that collided into the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. There would of course be 2 other planes involved, one that would crash into the Pentagon and one that tried to crash into the White House but failed. Now this was an event that happened over 25 years ago, and odds are, if I went to the US right now and made a joke centered around 9/11, everyone would find it funny, assuming I have good humor, except for those who were directly involved in those events.
You're probably correct.
A relative, or a friend. Hell, I could probably make a joke about Pearl Harbor, a tragic event that occurred during World War II. And again, the majority would probably not care. That's just how culture works in the United States when it comes to sensitive events. Nothing holds weight there for too long. Now, on the other hand,
that is true.
When it comes to East and Southeast Asia, actually, you know what? Probably the majority of Asia at this point, but let's just focus on East Asia for now. Tragic events, no matter when they happen throughout history, still hold immense weight even today. Their dates, their anniversaries, their names, they are ingrained into society, and no one would ever dare joke about them. This cultural clash can be perfectly illustrated during the meeting between President Trump of the United States and Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi of Japan. Trump would make a Pearl Harbor joke right to the Prime Minister's face and laugh it off. This is something perfectly acceptable in the United States. This is passable. Takaichi, on the other hand, I mean, you can see the facial expression on her. She was mortified. If she would have made a Pearl Harbor joke, or hell, I don't know, a Hiroshima or Nagasaki joke in Japan, she'd get impeached within less than 24 hours. That's just how the culture works there. And so, this is why it was extremely clumsy and stupid and tone deaf for Paper Games, a Chinese developer, to release a lore chapter on April 2026 about the character Xavier, where they talk about human experimentation and other dark themes, while titling it Test Record A0731. Like, even if I hired someone to sabotage this company from within, they wouldn't come up with such a genius idea. When you say the 3 numbers 731 to any Chinese person who was educated in a state school, for example, they'll immediately think of one thing: Unit 731 of the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. This was a secret research facility that was operated between 1933 and 1945 on occupied Chinese territory, more specifically in Harbin. This is where the Japanese would experiment on over 200,000 human beings from China. They would say it's to advance medicine, but in reality, many of these experiments were just morbid and sadistic. I'm not going to go into full detail because I'll get demonetized and age restricted, but you can read about this yourself. I can give you an example though. They'd have pregnant women in captivity in Unit 731, and those babies would be born in captivity as well. Those incredible scientists would come up with the idea to experiment on those babies, but not like any experiments. It would just be like, hey, I'm bored. Why don't we throw like a few babies in this frozen river outside and see how long it takes for them to die? Yeah, I wish I was making things up, bro. This was Unit 731. This is well known in Asia, specifically in China, because of how horrendous it was. But it's not really taught to Westerners. It's not taught in schools. In China, though, to this day, even in 2026, you say 731 to anyone, they'll know what you're talking about. There's a reason, many different reasons, that Chinese still hold Japanese people in very negative regard, even in 2026. This is without me mentioning the rape of Nanjing, for example. And so as a Chinese company, to have a lore text about human experimentation with the number 731 is just, it's insane. It's genuinely insane. But when it first came out in April 2026, it didn't really bring much controversy. In fact, most people didn't even know about it or didn't really care. The reason why I'm telling you about this right now is because this is going to bite them in the ass very badly later.
Oh, it
For
bites
now,
them
though,
so
the Love
hard.
and Deep Space community was laser focused on one thing and one thing only. When is my story content going to come out already?
Yeah, actually,
But
though.
here's the thing. Ever since the game released with 3 characters, there's always been a coming soon text on the bottom right, indicating
Always.
that there's going to be more love interests to come out. And so when Silas and Caleb released, their updates were so major because they came with more story content, with banners, with all sorts of things. And so many were wondering when this 6th character was finally going to come out, because this meant more story finally after a 6-month drought. Well, around the end of June 2026, the Love and Deep Space community would finally get an answer to this.
Oh, I
And
guess
while
it
this
was
meant to
6
be a
months.
period
I
of
just didn't
immense
pay
joy
attention
and
because it had
excitement,
nothing to do with
it ended up turning
Caleb
into the
or
biggest
Xavier.
existential threat that this game and studio have ever faced since opening their doors in 2012.
Oof.
All right, so it's now June 22nd, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Love and Deep Space players receive an in-game message telling them that they're about to witness a once-in-a-century supermoon, asking them to go watch a live stream that
Here
was
we
going to take
go.
place on the same day. This really came out of nowhere, and it shows you that they're kind of winging it with their scheduling. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Something like this would typically get like
Yeah, no, actually, though, let me just tell you, the amount of whiplash I had the morning of this announcement was insane. I woke up, I got on Twitter, and I was like, what is happening? And I could not get off of Twitter. For 2 days straight, probably.
a week's notice. In any case, the supermoon countdown would take hold. People waited with bated breath to see what this announcement was going to be, and then, all of a sudden, it was right there. A new character would be announced, Valko. Half wolf, half human. And as you can see by the chat on the global live stream that has almost 1 million views, the community was extremely excited. All of them spamming ow like a wolf, unable to wait to see him in action, both in combat but also the
Which, I'm going to say this, I'm going to get hate for it, and I already know I'm going to get hate for it, and I'm sorry. I'm not surprised that the global was like, yeah, ow, woo! And it's because the global will literally eat any slop that is put on their plate. Sorry, not sorry. When I first saw Valko, I was very, very skeptical of him. In fact, I did not like his original trailer, and I still don't. I think he looks like trash in that trailer. They ended up showing a few more, what looks to be in-game shot videos later on that came out, but the original trailer of him running to the moonlight and stuff, which I'm sure Mujin's gonna show, I hated it. I still hate it. I still think Valko looks like shit in it.
story, because a new character, as I said, signified a new region, so this was huge. However, in another live stream they would do shortly after, they would announce something else. Another major feature, which was the Home 2.0 update. You'd have a home that you can hang out
Which, let me be clear, I don't care. I barely do anything with my home because I don't care about the home. I want the main story.
with your love interests, and this time around, they were adding a kitchen where you can cook together with them and take pictures, etc. However, in the announcement trailer, they would use this sentence saying, "Never bathe in the pot."
I never saw
This
that.
was
That's
very,
new to me.
very tone deaf, just like with the whole 731 business, because the Chinese viewers, they felt that it was in reference to what had happened back in the year of 2024, where a man in Shanxi made the soul of his girlfriend evaporate to heaven by pouring extremely hot noodle broth on her using a pot. So due to this, the phrase
Yikes.
bathing in a pot had become dark lingo online, referencing this specific case. For example, you could tell someone, hey, go bathe in a pot, and people would understand you weren't wishing them well. So already this was causing a lot of controversy, even though a new love interest was
That's
just
a new
announced
one.
and
I
was
didn't
meant to
know
be
that
something very
about this
exciting.
that happened.
At the same time, in Valko's trailer, they would also use yet another.
I will say, these are not the ones that I'm originally talking about. These, he looks better. I'm not a huge fan of the way he looks personally, but this is not nearly as hideous as his original trailer that dropped.
Another controversial sentence while teasing him, saying, invite the wolf in. In the Chinese livestream, they had used a Chinese idiom, meaning to invite disaster by letting an enemy inside your home. Seeing that his character concept involves him breaking into the female protagonist's home, that didn't help. What also didn't help was that his dialogue included, what's wrong with inviting the wolf in? Just peek inside and she'll open her door for you. So, combining this with the whole bathe in the pot controversy, some Chinese players felt that Love in Deep Space was packaging illegal home invasion as a romantic fantasy, using language that explicitly frames a woman's private space as available to enter without consent. So this, on top of the whole bathe in the pot thing, went against the idea.
I'm gonna say something that's probably a little controversial. There's a lot of problematic things with all 5 of the love interests that currently exist. Like, I get it. Is it in bad taste? Sure. But you have Xavier, who met the main character when she was a child.
Bombastic side eye.
And arguably kind of followed her until she was an adult again, because he had met her in a past life when they were the same age. But the current main character he met when she was a kid, and he saved her life. Anyways, Zane is her doctor, which that's malpractice. That's a no-no. Raphael literally hires her to be his bodyguard and stalked her. So there's that. Silas kind of kidnaps her in a way and kind of holds her hostage for a while. Caleb is the not brother, like not, but also in some other scenarios, he is the brother. Cards, not main story. And the thing is that like our 3 light characters were Xavier, Raphael, and Zane, and then now Silas, Caleb, and Valko were going to be our like really dark characters. So like this doesn't shock me. So that's, I guess, my controversial take on it, is that I'm like, they all have problematic things about them. Valko was the 3rd of the 3 problematic or like darker love interests out of the 6. So
of this being a safe space for women, and it caused a lot of controversy as well. And if that wasn't enough, the Valko trailer that was posted on Chinese social media would get bombarded with over 750,000 comments, many of them very negative, because many players would express the fact that not only did they not feel safe around him because he'll break into your home or whatever, but they heavily disliked the way he looked, calling it too much of a Western look, saying things like, can it be released on the international server separately? And telling the developer either go offline or make it.
I will say, I do think he looks very Western. Not that the other 5 don't already have some Western pieces to them. He looks very Western.
Look better. It referring to Valko. Here's this comment, for example, getting 300 likes. No obligation to support the new Western male lead, refund, and shut down the server. With many also expressing the same thing by saying, just please release it on the global servers and leave the Chinese server alone, I'm begging you. At the same time, very toxic elements of the Chinese community would sprout out and would start insulting Western players, calling them Western white whores, while also telling Paper Games, hey, you fucking forgotten who your main donor is. You've forgotten who makes you the most money, us, the Chinese players. There will be some very nasty comments all around made towards Westerners because of Valko being teased. But it wouldn't just be his Western look.
And I will say, it was absolutely disgusting to read a lot of those comments. Whether he is more Western looking or not, that did not give anybody the right to say the absolutely disgusting things that they did.
That would turn them off. It goes back to what I was talking about the community grievances that had started spawning in 2025. The whole idea about the inconsistent release schedule, how some characters were getting main story releases and some others weren't, and for some reason there'd be complaints about the fact that the gacha odds are now worse with a 6th character. Instead of having a 1 in 5 chance of getting the banner you want, you have a 1 in 6 chance. I really have no idea why this became a thing, because I explained in this video how the banner system works.
No, you didn't, Mujin, because you really don't understand how the banner system works. You now go from, instead of having 6 options, because you have to choose 2 characters, and wait. You go from 12 to 14. So, no, that does not actually help the way that you think it does.
I guess we can call these people LARPers. And on top of that, there will be complaints about inconsistent story narratives, saying that Valko is a core leader of a villainous group in the story that has harmed all existing protagonists. So in a way, some didn't want a romantic interest that hurt the other romantic interests. But honestly, this was surprising to me that this was even a narrative, because even in his own trailer, it's explained that Valko is the Eon Core Tech chairman, not having anything to do with Ever. So this was yet another rumor that spawned on the Chinese internet that for some reason spread like wildfire. Are you starting to understand why this whole topic is so convoluted? Like, I'm genuinely so confused half the time. And on top of that, for some reason, I guess maybe it's a cultural
Oh, wow, they actually found a good shot of him.
thing, many Chinese female players feel like a wolf or a bear character is gay. So there were many complaints that Valko was gay, actually. This was really something that you could find a lot on Chinese social media.
I think I did hear
And I
about
guess the problem with having a
I knew about the whole, like, they thought he was gay. I did not realize it was because he was a wolf.
gay character, in their opinion, was the fact that Love and Deep Space would attract gay male players. And they don't want that. They only want this game to be directed towards women. Now, on this extremely ratioed post on Chinese social media, they would do their best to communicate with their player base, to calm any grievances they might have and tell them, hey, trust us. For example, this is them replying to someone that called Valko gay, saying, all the male protagonists are heterosexual, yesterday, today, tomorrow, and forever. And they would reply with things like, I'm sorry, after you've calmed down a bit from venting, could you please take a look at this wolf and give him a try? Please. Damage control was in full swing. But these replies would be posted on Chinese social media known as Xiaohongshu, and the comments weren't really impressed. They really just didn't like the character, and they didn't really like the direction the game was headed in. This was in massive contrast to the global audience, okay? Like, this is Valko's trailer that was released on Twitter, and it didn't just get 5 million views and a lot of likes. Many of the top comments, in fact, all of them, were very, very excited for him. It would actually be hard to find any.
Again, I will say, this video that Mujin's actually showing now is significantly better than what we initially saw of Valko. I did actually kind of like Valko after this short video. I still think that there's some pieces of him that were kind of stolen from other love interests, which people do comment about at some point, which I don't know if Mujin's going to bring it up or not. And that I was a little disappointed in, and I wish that they would have made him a little bit more original. But, you know, whatever, I guess.
Negativity on this post. Unfortunately, none of these players are local, okay? They're all outside of China, and the people that had a problem with paper games were in China. It wasn't all of them, but it was a very loud and toxic chunk of the community. So much so that they would take this to ridiculous levels.
Yeah, they went
sending
insane.
Literal cow poop to the studio. Many players would go around the building and take pictures of themselves giving a middle finger to the studio. And there were some that employed an amazing tactic used by South Korean crazy K-pop fans, which is also sending the studio funeral flowers. There'd even be a wolf paw in front of the studio meant to advertise Valko, and it would get vandalized. The police would have to show
I did
up
not
and
know
install
about that.
yellow tape around it so that no one else messes with it again. And to make matters worse, someone live streamed themselves with a knife in front of the building, trying to make their way in. Here are some images, with a third image being censored with the weapon.
What?
I wish this was a joke. Here's a 9-second clip that was recorded in front of the studio that kind of shows you the chaos that they were dealing with after Valko's announcement, with someone just screaming insults towards the studio. Watch.
Absolutely crazy.
And so soon after, this would start being reported on by
What?
international media outlets. And on top of all this, Love and Deep Space would lose over 1 million followers across all their Chinese social platforms. This was a very big deal, and it was becoming uncontrollable. No matter what they tried to quell the damage, it was done.
Yeah,
But
it
that
was
didn't
bad.
mean they wouldn't try anyway. On
I
June
watched those
27th,
numbers drop
2026, just
in,
5
like,
days after the initial announcement of
in
Valko,
real time.
Love and Deep Space would make an announcement for the global audience, in which they say, Dear Deep Space Hunters, recently the development team has received a great deal of feedback and many suggestions regarding the game. We have also heard your concerns about the team's capacity to consistently deliver high-quality content in the future. So this has to do with their inconsistent updates, right? We would therefore like to take this opportunity to respond with the care that your trust and expectations deserve. From the very beginning, we have hoped to make Love and Deep Space a romantic world that continues to grow alongside every Deep Space hunter, a world filled with more.
I do just want to say that this entire, like, note, I read it whenever it first came out, and I read it and it sounded like PR garbage. It just sounded like they were covering their asses.
Diverse experiences and lasting companionship. This hope has guided us throughout the game's development and remains at the heart of everything we are working toward. The development of Valko and his related content is part of the long-term content plan for Love and Deep Space. However,
which I don't believe, truthfully. I don't. I think Valko was later conceptualized and was kind of slapdash thrown together, and they realized that people were complaining about main story content. And I think Mujin makes a good point here, to where most main story stuff was coming out with the following love interest, but the problem was that they seemed to like not get away from that formula very much or very well. And so I think they had been hearing, oh, we want more main story, we want more main story, we want more main story so many times that I think they might have rushed, because I didn't actually put 2 and 2 together. Because to me, I was like, just release more main story. Like, you don't have to release it alongside a character. But I think they were so, like, locked into the idea that, like, if they were going to release a lot of, like, big main story update stuff, they had to release another, like, love interest. And I'm like, you don't. But I can understand where that was the formula. That was what they were trying to do. So there are times to where I've looked at things and I've been like, Valko seemed rushed. And it seemed like Valko was not actually from the beginning conceptualized. I think he was conceptualized later, and that they pushed his release earlier so that way they could get the main story out with him, because it has become more apparent that the main story was supposed to come out with him, but this all happened and he got canceled. So I think this is a lesson on both ends, which Paper Games needs to learn, that you need to release story without a goddamn character. Like, you can create things and you can have these story updates without releasing that, and you will make people happy. And then you can release that later. And at the same time, I think it also comes from, on the player side of things, like, we have to learn that, like, we don't know everything until it releases. And the fact that we got it canceled before it released, we never got to see, like, truthfully what was potentially going to come out with that. And so people who were upset about the main story potentially just had the main story taken from them because it was supposed to come out alongside Valko. I still think Paper Games is more in the wrong for this, because they should have just released story content for the missing love interests. So I think there's lessons to be learned on both ends, but I think Paper Games really needs to learn a hard lesson on this one. My 2 cents.
we recognize that the way the information about Valko was presented did not give sufficient consideration to your expectations and concerns regarding the game's future content plans. As a result, many hunters have been left with questions and worries since Valko's initial announcement. We sincerely apologize for any frustration and unease this has caused. We have also heard your concerns about whether future content can continue to be delivered consistently without compromising on quality. Please be assured that the Love and Deep Space development team has continued to grow since the game's launch. The main story chapters you have been waiting for are currently in active development. The stories of Farspace Colonel Caleb and Onikinus leader Silas will continue, and a new series of Solar Slot memories will also be arriving soon. The development team will continue to deliver richer game experiences and high-quality content on a consistent basis. We also understand that these concerns are not simply about the
which I do also just want to point out that the stories of Farspace Colonel Caleb and Onikinus leader Silas, like that, I think they had some stuff wrapped up with Valko that was going to come out. I don't believe that they 100% were actually working on stuff for those two characters solely on their own outside of Valko, which is garbage in my opinion. You can release stuff on Valko, but you can also release stuff on the two characters, one of which who hasn't had anything for a year and 8 months at this point. So that I don't believe. I think they scrambled to say that because Silas and Caleb fans have been asking for anything for over a year.
Pace of updates. They come from how deeply you care about Love and Deep Space and the love interests who have been by your side throughout this journey. It is because you cherish every moment you have shared with them that you hope this companionship will continue for many years to come. For this reason, we want to make this commitment to you. The stories, companionship, and future of every love interest will always remain an essential part of the long-term plans for Love and Deep Space. This will not change for any reason. Enclosed with this letter are Deep Space Wish 10 and Empyrean Wish 10. Please log into the game before July 23rd to claim them from your in-game mailbox. Once again, we would like to thank every Deep Space Hunter for the encouragement.
Which I think they should have given more than 10 of each of those, but that's my opinion.
Journey. We know that it is your unwavering love and support that give meaning to everything we do and guide us forward. In the future, the development team will keep working hard to bring you more high-quality content and a better game experience worthy of your support. We hope you have a wonderful day in Lincoln City and many more wonderful days to come. Signed, the Love and Deep Space development team. And so look, this was in reference to the fact that in this game there's currency. Currency you can earn by playing the game that you can also buy. This announcement for Valko came out of nowhere. Some people were probably not prepared, didn't save up enough to be able to pull for his
came out of
banner,
nowhere.
and they didn't really want to miss out on the memory. This was Love and Deep Space acknowledging that the announcement came out of nowhere and that in the future they would keep them updated ahead of time, while also taking into consideration that they should probably have a more consistent schedule that takes every love interest into account.
Yeah, they
This gave hope
probably
to many
should.
global players who might have had grievances with the game's development schedule, and many had a lot of optimism. However, global players were not their main concern right now. It was the Chinese players, and they were about to pull out a very dirty strategy to punish the developer into kneeling down and obeying their wishes, which is removing Valko from the game. And that strategy involves getting the attention of the Chinese state. And so, remember that good old test record A0731? Yeah, well, even though it came out in April, it would get brought out again in June during the Valko controversy, and so a new narrative would form. Paper Games is an enemy of the state, and they have a Japanese mole inside that is there to mock the Chinese people and their suffering. So within just a few days after Valko had been announced, this narrative would spread like wildfire, so much so that it would force Love and Deep Space to make a statement on the 29th of June talking about it, as well as the other grievances the community had. It would be posted on the Chinese social media website known as Weibo. And here's what they'd have to say
getting
after translating it
the
through Google Translate. Recently,
government
we have
involved
noticed many
was
discussions
absolutely
circulating
insane.
online regarding the game and promotional content of Love and Deep Space. We sincerely apologize for any misunderstandings and negative experiences caused. Thank you for your continued attention, and we will humbly accept opinions from all parties. To avoid such content affecting the gaming experience of our players, we would like to clarify and explain these issues as follows. Number 1. Date controversy in the world's depths. Harmony with Light and Dust. We received feedback from players that the Harmony with Light and Dust update on April 21st contained a number that could easily lead to misunderstandings. We took this very seriously and immediately conducted an internal investigation. It has been confirmed that the number is a fictitious date, a placeholder without any actual meaning, and has not been packaged in any way. We fully understand the potential misunderstandings that this random number may cause and will complete the online modification as quickly as possible today. This issue
Which I will say, if this was brought up earlier, why did they not take care of it earlier? But also, if this is a Chinese game, and if it is true that those in China would know this number and this number would matter and stuff like that, like why did it not get changed earlier? 2, why was there not bigger outrage back in April about it? And 3, why would you argue that the number means nothing if literally like the number itself relates directly to exactly what the contents of that little story thing that was added? Like what? Like how can you sit here and tell me that like, oh, the number means nothing? Like the whole thing with this whole like number thing is just fishy to me.
Exposed the lack of sensitivity among some members of the development team. We will strengthen training to prevent such situations from recurring. We will also further improve our internal review mechanism, paying attention to every detail to ensure the quality of online content. Number 2, controversy arising from some marketing copy. In the promotional material released on June 25th, marking 3 days until the livestream's countdown, the phrase, "taking a bath in a pot," was accused of containing a suggestive reference. In reality, this copy was a teaser for the upcoming Home 2.0 update's kitchen gameplay, written in a non-everyday style to match the livestream's Strange Tales of Rules theme. So this is badly translated, but what they were saying was the teaser was like in a horror theme, and this was meant to match this horror theme. This is why they used that phrase. It had nothing to do with that incident that happened in 2024. They would then continue and say, due to the widespread
None of this played out like the trailers and stuff. Again, I saw them. None of them looked like they were horror themed. And if they were horror themed, why are you releasing them in June and not October?
circulation of misinterpretations for this content, all related content has been removed to avoid unnecessary confusion for players. We urge everyone not to believe such rumors. Furthermore, the inviting the wolf into the house text in the trailer released on June 28th, The Law of Instinct, is simply a copywriting element related to the new male protagonist's werewolf identity and has no other meaning. We have noticed some controversy surrounding this text. To avoid affecting the player experience, this text and all related materials will be uniformly changed to Pure Love Wolf King. And then in the last part of the statement, they would clarify, we don't make characters specifically for one audience or demographic. This idea that it's a Western male character is just not true. And also this rumor about us being an all gender-oriented game is utterly absurd, ignoring our consistent positioning as an otome game. In other words, no gays allowed, okay? This is a female-only game. Stop with these stupid...
I do want to be very clear about this before we get terribly far into this. So, to paint this as clear and concisely as I possibly can, otome games are games that are specifically built and catered towards women, typically straight women. And with that being said, that is what it is catered towards, which means that is the assumption of the characters in the game, is that all of those characters are straight men. Now, does that mean that you, as someone who does not identify as a woman, cannot play this game? No. There are games that, I grew up playing that were probably more geared towards men and boys. I still played them. I still have games today that I play that arguably are probably more geared towards men. Does that mean I can't play them? No. But at the same time, that means that that's not going to be the majority of the community. I am not going to be the majority of the community. That's where the differences need to be understood. The intention of this game is to be women centered and to be women catered towards and stuff like that. And so the assumption, and it's going to be straight women that they're catering towards because we don't see any women in the game that we can romance. So if you are someone who is not presumably a straight woman or a bi woman, someone who is interested in men and as a woman, the game is technically not for you, which means you're not going to see a large portion of you in the demographic of the audience that is playing the game. Again, that does not mean that you cannot play the game. You can still play the game. You just have to understand that you are not going to be the majority. Hope that makes sense.
Rumors. They'd also defend themselves. As a Chinese company who have always considered this our responsibility and have never stopped promoting Chinese culture overseas. They just took a stand here and reminded everyone, yo, these rumors are absurd. We do so much to spread Chinese culture overseas to Western players. You saying that we only care about Western players and don't care about Chinese players is ridiculous. And so this post would get over 1.6 million likes, but also over 200,000 comments. The top comment would be saying, I'd rather take Valko off the shelves. With over 136,000 likes, the reply to that would be, remove Valko from the platform. And another reply would say, our demands are, number 1, remove Valko. Number 2, compensate for gacha resources. And number 3, the production team should deeply reflect on their own problems and issue an apology, while promising to not add any new male leads. In fact, all the top comments are just shitting on the developer, saying that they deserve all the controversy going their way, and that this was a bad statement. Now new rumors were popping up. Paper Games was arrogant. They don't know how to apologize. They don't know how to take a step back. They're an enemy of the state, and they're not even apologetic about it. What didn't make it any better to Paper Games, honestly, is the fact that they would replace the 731 number with 611, which was another tragedy that involved Japanese forces invading the town of Daojiao. 3,000 villagers were rounded up and killed, and you know how stories go.
I knew 611 was another bad number. I did not know what the history and what the tie was. Ridiculous though they swapped from 731 to 611 when apparently both of them have terrible ties and are both Japanese doing bad things in history.
Oh, with the Japanese, okay? They're literally the evil villains of Asia up until after World War II when they became the anime central capital of the world. I really need to specify here though, I haven't seen a single screenshot showing that whole 611 mistake. This most likely seems to be yet another false rumor created on the Chinese internet that spread.
I'd have to look it up. I'm pretty sure I've seen pictures of it. Yeah, maybe I haven't read it yet. So if I do actually find it, I will post it. But for now, I don't have access to it.
Even to the west. But like the other things so far in this video that you've seen, it had already spread like wildfire and created yet another rumor involving the CEO. Paper Games wasn't just an enemy of the state, the CEO also was. Why? Because he studied in a Japanese university by the name of Waseda University as an economics major. So he was the internal mole. He was the one who put 731 on purpose because he hates China. He's actually a secret Japanese citizen.
Didn't know that.
Here's where things truly got out of control when it came to the whole 731 situation. I know, it already got out of control. They're being made to be an enemy of the state. How could it get any worse? Well, you would have multiple media outlets in China create articles in which they would attribute the number 731 with Valko specifically. You'd even have the news publication Beijing Daily, which is of course government affiliated, talk about this too, and talk about 731 and how it's associated with Valko. In reality, this was false. This was an archive file that was talking about lore relating to Xavier. But this misinformation had spread so far and wide because it was literally being talked about by news publications that many took it as fact. Oh, so Valko is not only ugly and looks like a Westerner and doesn't care about the Chinese audience, but he's also an insult to Chinese culture and China as a country because 731 is associated with his lore. That's false. And many Westerners also were caught with this misinfo, believing it to be true.
Yeah,
This was
it's
becoming a
cult with
very big
Xavier.
problem to paper games. I mean, these news publications were publishing shorts in which they talked about paper games statement and were associating 731 with Valko.
Wild.
And other than just media publications, you even have associations like the China Women's Association
so
that is affiliated with the
overexposed.
government also make content expressing outrage at the whole letting the wolf in sentence or the whole never bathe in the pot sentence, pushing the narrative further that this game is not safe for women, that it's their enemy. They weren't alone in this regard, because there would be another association by the name National Defense Education that would make a blog post echoing those same statements. But believe it or not, things would get even worse. The people who wanted Valko gone wanted the attention of the government by any means necessary. And other than creating the narrative of enemy of the state, they would also do something else that's sure to attract eyes from the government at any given moment in time. And that is creating countless complaints to the China Consumers Association, saying that they got scammed by this company. Over 60,000 verified complaints were made in the span of just a few days. And honestly, it doesn't even matter if they're real or not, okay? This is a way that many Chinese people boycott or target companies that have screwed them in some way. Because at the 40,000 complaint mark, automatic safeguards get triggered at any given company.
40,000.
The China Consumers Protection Agency
That's a
contacts
lot.
that company just to see what's going on. And so, with this unbelievable and unprecedented pressure that was put on paper games, even with them already addressing this and doubling down, kind of defending themselves, on June 30th, they would post a letter pretty much announcing that they were going to cancel Valko's release and not release any more love interests in the game for the foreseeable future. Just as a reminder,
Which I do just want to point out that it says for the foreseeable future. I personally think they pulled him back and they put him back internally and stuff like that, because I don't think they're actually going to get rid of Valko. There's too much that was put into him and too many resources and too much money. I think they're waiting for a lot of stuff to die down, and then they're going to figure out how to probably rework a couple of things about him and then try and re-release him later on.
it had been barely a week since the first
But I think if they're smart, they'll stop at Valko.
trailer for Valko, and they were already canceling everything. So this is like as if Genshin announced an entirely new region and a week later decided to cancel the entire thing and said, hey, by the way, no more regions. The game's done. This also meant that all the story content that was finally going to come to the game after a 6-month content drought was going to be canceled too. It genuinely could not have been worse for anyone who likes this game. To announce such a big update.
No, actually, though, like, this game has been boring since this whole thing happened. They've arguably, like, ran nothing. Right now, they're trying to do, like, the login and claim thing for Zane, but there's literally nothing going on right now. There's no events. There's no, like, I can go to the Wish tab. It's literally just the main banner. Like, there is literally nothing in this game right now. Like, it's actually crazy how dead this is right now. Like, since I started playing, this is the deadest I've ever seen this game. What do we have? Nothing.
And cancel it after barely a week. This had never happened, especially for a game of this scale. This post would be viewed over 26 million times and would have over 40,000 replies. Many of the top ones were ratioing it. They were in utter disbelief that paper games would bend to such toxic and loud people in the Chinese community. This game was created to make you, as a woman playing it, feel seen and acknowledged, and yet, with this announcement, they had essentially told all global players, we don't care about you even existing. That's how it felt. Even though they were put between a rock and a hard place, even though they were cornered by what was going on in China, this still felt horrible for just about anyone who ever played this game.
It is kind of true.
You go anywhere, whether it be Twitter, Reddit, any other place this community was present in, and you would see just the disbelief. They genuinely couldn't believe this had just happened. But honestly, if you took a step back, none of this really made sense. This was really overblown for no reason, and anyone with common sense could see that. A huge chunk of Paper Games revenue came from global players, so how come they were just forced to bend the knee so quickly? Well, that's because they had become the worst thing you can ever be in the country of China, becoming an element of chaos. Okay, so let's get one thing straight. There was a timeline to this, and it wasn't always about being an enemy of the state or whatever. This had started out with consumer dissatisfaction about Valko, about the fact that he looks gay and Western and all that stuff. But then Chinese media publications would start twisting it into something way bigger than it actually was. It went from consumer dissatisfaction to women's safety to becoming an enemy of the state with 731 to paper games refusing to take responsibility, being arrogant. And eventually, because of how badly paper games was portrayed in media, this wouldn't just be about, hey, let's just cancel this character. This would be like, hey, you deserve more punishment as a company. You deserve to go bankrupt. and hence why they had become an element of chaos. So what is that exactly? Well, it's a term I came up with, I guess. But in China, the most important thing that has to be maintained is order. As soon as something goes against that, as soon as something interferes, then they become a problem. A great example of this actually happened to Hoyoverse back in 2021. The reason? Well, Hoyoverse had released a music video of Honkai Impact characters dancing in bunny suit outfits. They had not released it in China. Chinese players took grave offense to this and started calling Hoyoverse a traitor, an enemy of the state. Hence why someone tried to assassinate the CEO. Yes, it was over the stupidest thing imaginable, yes. But that wasn't even Hoyoverse's biggest worry, because people would employ the same strategy used against paper games, mass reporting Hoyoverse to the Chinese Consumer Protection Agency and creating a narrative online that they are an enemy of China. Eventually, this would prompt them to delete that bunny girl dance music video off every platform imaginable, while also releasing an apology. They would give their players some crumbs as a reward, while giving the Chinese players almost 3 times the amount of rewards, apologizing to them for doing this unforgivable thing. I had made a video about this almost 2 years ago, so it really shows that even a company like Hoyoverse is not immune to this. This was after Genshin Impact had come out, by the way. The way they were able to get past this without any issues was by apologizing, removing the music video everywhere, and having the CEO join the political party of China.
Of course.
Was him pretty much saying, hey guys, I'm not your enemy, I'm not a traitor, look. Because when the government gets involved, everything becomes
he had to join.
And this is exactly what was happening to paper games. On the 8th of July, 2026, the Ministry of Public Security would publish a statement about what was going on with Levin Deep Space. I mean, this is pretty much the government saying this. They'd say, recently, an online game targeting female players has sparked widespread controversy. The game features a storyline where the male protagonist breaks into a woman's home late at night, accompanied by offensive promotional slogans such as, "What's wrong with letting a wolf into the house?" packaging the illegal act of trespassing as a romantic encounter. This kind of entertainment-driven, traffic-driven creative work disregards public order and morality, crosses legal boundaries, and may ultimately endanger public safety. The safety of women living alone is a serious public issue concerning personal rights, social order, and the protection of women's rights, and it is by no means material for arbitrary adaptation or meme creation. Chinese law strictly protects citizens' rights to housing, and no one may illegally intrude. China's criminal law clearly stipulates that those who commit the crime of illegal intrusion into a residence can be sentenced to imprisonment for up to 3 years or detention. If a game packages such behavior as fun interaction, it may be suspected of promoting and glorifying illegal and criminal methods, which is not only a disregard for the authority of the law, but also a blatant transgression against the spirit of the rule of law. Even more dangerous is its intangible erosion of public perception. This creative logic that prioritizes traffic can easily mislead the public, especially causing cognitive biases in minors whose minds are not yet mature, weakening their vigilance against dangerous behaviors, and seriously undermining the effectiveness of public safety education. I just want to point out that this game is not for minors, okay?
No, it is not.
It's mature only.
It is very much
but still,
not.
This was the narrative and you couldn't do anything about it. They would then continue. Some might argue that games are games and reality is reality. They shouldn't be confused. However, facts have shown that online game content that crosses ethical boundaries can seriously negatively impact the healthy development of teenagers. In 2018, 15-year-old Xiao Tang became deeply addicted to a violent video game. Seeking the thrill of killing in the virtual world, he brutally murdered his 23-year-old female neighbor. This tragic case should serve as a stark warning to everyone. You then have an image of Valko. So Valko was acknowledged by a government agency as being a source of a problem. And then they would continue, the virtual space created by online games is never a lawless zone. Laws and regulations, such as the regulations of the government.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. If this is the case, Valko might not ever return.
Of online information content ecology and the regulations of the protection of minors online clearly prohibit the production and dissemination of content that may incite minors to imitate unsafe behaviors, induce bad habits, or violate social morality, thus setting a clear bottom line for the creation of online game content. As of now, all relevant characters and storylines in the game have been taken offline for rectification, a move that addresses public concerns. However, taking it offline is not the end. Deeper reflection is needed. This incident serves as another warning to the industry. Any content production that deliberately blurs the lines of illegality, glorifies dangerous behavior, or undermines public safety will ultimately be subject to legal sanctions and public resistance. So here they were acknowledging that Valko got removed, that this was the right step, but that deeper reflection was needed, indicating potentially even further censorship now that the game had a target on its back. They would then end this by saying, to address the chaos in online game content, a comprehensive approach is needed across the entire chain of creation, review, and regulation. game companies must abandon profit-driven motives and improve their multi-tiered content risk control and review systems to eliminate misleading and harmful content at the source. Regulatory authorities should adhere to strict governance, refine review standards, and resolutely hold accountable companies that overstep their bounds and violate regulations. Simultaneously, families, schools, and society must work together to strengthen legal and safety education for teenagers and safeguard the healthy growth of minors. The title of this, by the way, was Glorifying Intrusion is Unacceptable Even in Online Games. This was a disaster. Attracting the eyes of a government agency like this and having them write such a staunch article against you
that's bad.
was the literal last thing you wanted as a Chinese company. You'd rather have your entire executive board get fired than this. Now look, the global side was already in disbelief, and I'm going to talk about how they did their best to fight against this decision. But seeing that Chinese media was talking about this and seeing that this article from the Ministry of Public Security had been made, many global players would start spreading misinformation. Like this person.
So I don't think I realized how closely Valko was like wrapped up in all of the like actual like legality stuff. So like seeing all of that, I'm actually a little concerned that he's never going to come back now.
Right here would make a post with over 2 million views in which they would write a fan fiction saying that someone powerful in the Chinese government got angered enough that now all otome in China could be permanently affected. Or how this post with over 1 million views would say that allegedly the dev team is threatening to leave paper games if Valko isn't reinstated. These things are not confirmed in any way, shape, or form.
I didn't think this was confirmed. I remember seeing this post about the dev team said that they'd leave if Valko isn't released, and I was like, where? Like, I didn't see anything about it. Like, we kept hearing, like, oh, a friend of a friend of a friend, or, like, my dad's brother's acquaintance type of idea. Like, we never had, like, confirmation on anything about stuff like this.
But this is what happens when the developer of a game is on a different internet than yours, using an entirely different language. But global players, as well as many Chinese players, weren't simply going to sit idly by watching their favorite game get destroyed right in front of them. And so a global movement would be born overnight.
Which I knew about this.
Unprecedented in terms of scale that I have never seen before.
It's absolutely wild.
Barely 24.
So with that being the case, I am going to pause this again because there's still 20 minutes left in this. This is a lot. This is a long, really long video. There's so much happening with all of this. So I am going to take a pause. I'm not going to finish reacting to this tonight. I am quite exhausted right now. It is currently 10 in the evening for me. So you'll either see me again here soon on this video or there'll be another video. I'll say something if I end up doing a third video. So I did wind up making a part 3 on a separate day. So please go check out part 3 and hello from the future.